Hello, this is Joan with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing Day 5 of KaffeBox's Advent Calendar, featuring the Dj'udje washed Ethiopia from Coffea Circulor. And there's the container right there. Okay, and they were featured in my video yesterday as well. It looks like KaffeBox provided back-to-back Coffea Circulor coffees for their Advent Calendar. They are based out of Arendal, Norway, and a brief bit on yesterday's coffee. I didn't love the coffee, but it's just because of the flavor of the coffee. I felt that they did an amazing job with the coffee itself, that if they did provide a coffee that was a little bit more my flavor profile, then I would probably enjoy the coffee a lot more. And just kind of based off of a first impression with this coffee, my very first sip, I could tell that this was probably going to be more my type of coffee. And just a brief bit more information before we actually start talking about this coffee. I wanted to note that on their Instagram they did have a recipe for this coffee, which was a 15:1 water to coffee ratio, which I typically use 16.6, and a lot of these Scandinavian coffee roasters that I found on their websites like this 15:1 ratio, so I'm going to be using a 15:1 ratio for pretty much all these coffees unless something else is stated. And they have 199 to 203 degrees, which I typically like 203 to 204. So I'm keeping it in the middle at 201 degrees, so anyone that's curious about my recipe for these coffees, unless otherwise stated, I'm probably doing 201 at 15:1. But let's go ahead and start talking about this coffee now. And again, I didn't look at what I was drinking, so I just kind of got that first impression. And the first impression I got was a very strong fleshy fruit, stone fruit sort of flavor. I was thinking peaches, probably apricot, something along those lines, but it was more of that yellow orange stone fruit that I was getting at the start. As it cooled down just a slight bit, it got this pretty strong lime flavor, and I couldn't help but notice this is probably maybe the strongest lime flavored coffee I've ever had, and I was into it. I think the change, I really love when you have those washed Ethiopias that taste like those fleshy fruits. Maybe my favorite of kind of the standard coffees, but the lime was pretty nice too. And yeah, there definitely was some things too as it's cooled down. Like as it's cooled down right now, I'm getting a bit of like caramel and honey, and I would say pretty nice coffee up to this point. It's kind of interesting the things that they noted as their flavor profile: green grape, fresh mint, and Rainier cherry. And while I got just the slightest bit of cherry in this, I don't know if I ever tasted mint or grape at this point. It seems like a lot of the aftertastes they mentioned, the apricot, jasmine, and honey, those were a lot more of the things I was getting, so maybe I was just missing the flavor while drinking coffee. Well, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what I was getting. And the cleanliness of this coffee is really high, body pretty low. Standard Ethiopia, washed Ethiopia. Pretty high finish, but then the citrus fruit and the stone fruit are the two things I put just as high as the cleanliness and the finish of this coffee. Honestly, I could have put the citrus fruit a little higher given how limey this coffee was, but I felt given there was a pretty decent balance between the lime and the stone fruit in this coffee, I felt comfortable kind of leaving them at the same level. Florals kind of high because while it wasn't the most prominent thing, I definitely was getting some subtle florals. And the berry fruits, there was just the slightest bit of cherry that I was getting. But none of those florals or that cherry was as pronounced as the lime and the stone fruits were. And even now as I'm drinking it, I get a little bit of the lime and probably some nice caramel. I think it's safe to say that I did enjoy this coffee more than I enjoyed yesterday's coffee, but it hasn't been my favorite from the Advent Calendar. I'm gonna rave again about this coffee roaster because I think they're doing a great job, and I think they've done enough to convince me to buy a bag of coffee from them at some point and review it, especially if I ever find it at a multi-roaster, because a lot of the flavors that they have listed on here, again, aren't necessarily my favorites, but this coffee turned out to be really nice, and again, I think they're doing an amazing job with so many of their coffees. But who would I suggest this coffee to? Definitely people that love their lime, and this, I should note this because I was thinking about this the entire time I was drinking this coffee. If you like camber, there was a camber I had a couple years ago that was extremely similar to this coffee. Very limey and some really nice fleshy fruits. And I can't help but draw comparisons to this, that this is kind of a lighter version of that camber and some camber coffees. So if you really like camber, I think that this is a great kind of lighter option if you wanted to try kind of a lighter equivalent of camber, especially the Ethiopia, if you know which one I'm referencing. But I think I'm going to leave it at that. I think this is probably the last Coffea Circulor video. Correction, the last Coffea Circulor coffee that they're going to include in this advent calendar. So again, if you've tried their coffee, let me know what you've thought of their coffee, any coffees from them you really like or would suggest. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a review of the Dj'udje washed Ethiopia from Coffea Circulor. Thank you for watching.